Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, also on podcasts and Facebook Live. Next, you can find me on YouTube, and our segments on YouTube are shorter, easier to digest when you're walking your dog or running around trying to get some exercise in. So this is our fourth segment. You know what that means.
And now, it's time for the Talk Law Radio Legacy Spotlight. What's your legacy? Sponsored by Marquardt Law Firm.
Okay, so a person's legacy is important when they're establishing their estate planning, and since Marquardt Law Firm sponsors the show, we like to talk about legacy. But legacy can often mean more than just a fistful of cash after you're inheriting assets from somebody who's passed away. Sometimes it's values, sometimes it's work ethic, sometimes it's the moral rules that we live by, sometimes it's our faith in Jesus. And so we like to ask our guests about that. And I'd like to ask you, Dr. Schillerstrom, what's important to you when you hear the word legacy?
Yeah, I think people want to know, how they'll be remembered. What were the contributions they made to the world? How did they make the world a better place, a happier place? And what was the contribution, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that. I think about that for myself too. Will people remember that Todd Marquardt guided their families to have their affairs in order so that there was less anxiety at the time of death? What do you think people will remember you by?
Yeah, I hope, like I told you, I have all these residents in training, right? So I think one of my biggest legacies truly is the residents, the doctors that I train.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of that. Really proud of, every June when we have our graduation and I just see 20 outstanding psychiatrists graduate and go on to serve the Air Force or our community. I think that's just truly amazing, really.
Yeah,
and that's something I'm definitely proud of.
And it's very needed. Like I was telling you before the show, that it's hard to find specialists to do these evaluations of someone's medical condition to find out if they have capacity. Because sometimes it's not easy for lawyers and paralegals to see, whether they do or whether they don't, because they can express themselves, they can have a conversation, but maybe they make bad decisions. But still, we have the right as U.S. citizens to make bad decisions if we want to.
God bless it.
As long as you're over the age of 18 and as long as you have the capacity to understand what you're doing, right?
That's right. That's right.
And I think it's a big responsibility, too, because as we've mentioned before, there's a lot of anxiety in the world. And so we need professionals to help reduce anxiety.
I think that's another legacy. I hope that when I'm gone from this world, that people look back and know that Dr. Jason Schillerstrom advocated for elders. He advocated to make sure that they were treated fairly, that their wishes, their desires were protected, and that they were safe, and that their legacies were honored too.
Awesome. Yeah, because one of the things that you do is you help identify if somebody who wrote a will might have been incapacitated when they signed it.
That's right.
Great. Sharyl, how about you? What do you think about when you hear legacy?
Well, for me, mine is more on the moral side of everything. I've been raised a Christian, and I believe that we are here to live how God told us to live, and that's full of love for everybody else, including those that are sinners too.
Amen.
So it's my job to be here and not judge and just help.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to mention who the sinners and the saints were. So let me go back to that. The reason I like to talk about sinners and saints is because of a Christian theologian named Martin Luther. He's the one that wrote the 95 Theses and nailed them to the church door in year 1517. He said, the saints are sinners too, but they are forgiven and absolved. So this week, I'd like to give a shout out to Bexar County Judge Peter Sakai. He was mentioned in the newspaper for advocating for remodeling the San Antonio State Hospital to help be a place where mental health could be treated. And the sinner of the week isn't really related to guardianship. I just read in the newspaper that Christian Alexander Moreno, age 31, and his wife, Abilene Schneider, were arrested and charged with attack by a dangerous dog resulting in death and injury to an elderly person. Shame on you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Keep your dogs safe, right?
That's right. Okay.
That's why there's laws for the dogs, too.
That's right. Okay. So I want to go back to proving guardianship and how important it is for everybody to know that this isn't a one-size-fit-all. Guardianship is the solution of last resort to a problem when somebody doesn't have capacity to make decisions and there's nothing else that can help. So sometimes there are things that can help, like power of attorney or medical power of attorney, and so you should use that. But when somebody is in front of the probate judge and there are questions about capacity because of a medical condition, the law requires evidence about whether somebody is incapacitated with regards to deciding where they're going to live, whether they can vote, whether they can operate a motor vehicle, and whether they can get married. And so have you seen, Dr. Schillerstrom, some instances where somebody was incapacitated in one way, but they could still vote, or they could still get married, or they could still drive?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I've seen that.
What does that look like?
Usually, probably the most common cases I see like that are when someone is unable to manage their finances, but they're able to do everything else. And maybe one of the more relatable examples are when, elders might fall victim to financial scams, like lottery scams, that kind of thing. And they just keep giving their money and their funds are depleted and they're just going to these scammers. It's terrible. And so, so in cases, and they just can't see it any other way. It's a real strong psychology there. And so their children really do need to serve as the financial guardian, but what's also true is that the person is able to provide a safe home. They are able to take their medications. They are able to drive. They're just not able to see the predators out there, that are just, robbing them blind.
Have you seen that, Sharyl?
Absolutely.
And so in your experience, what did that look like? What was an example?
So unfortunately, the elderly community don't get technology like some of us do. Mm-hmm. And so they start getting the emails from the grandson that's overseas and they need the help. Well, they know, okay, well, I've got to go to the bank. I've got to make this transfer to this account. They still are able to get to the bank. They're still able to make the request for the transfer, but they don't see that they didn't have the whereabouts to call the grandson first and say, hey, are you really overseas?
Right.
So there is that disconnect.
And Dr. Schillerstrom, you said there's a strong psychology there when it comes to a scam. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so I guess I'm thinking of lottery scams, for example, where you get called out of the blue and you're told you won the lottery. And all you got to do is send a check for $100 to claim your prize. And then they send a check for $100 and they get a call back. Look, you won $10 million, $20 million, and we got your $100 check, but you got to pay this tax, and this tax is $1,500. And then they send that, and then they get another call later, and they need this much money. And before you know it, the person has given away, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the psychology is they're only asking me for another $1,000. I've given them $100,000 already. If I don't give them the check for another $1,000,
then
sure I get nothing.
Yeah.
But I could get $10 million. It's like you get sucked in, and it's just a really strong psychology. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for explaining that. Another issue that attorneys run into is somebody with mental health issues, and I've had prospective clients want me to apply for guardianship, and we have to prove that this person is substantially unable to do these things for themselves, but they can do some of those things, but the family knows that they're going to stop taking their medication, they're going to be homeless, and they're going to get in trouble with the police. And so what are some quick tips on how to deal with a struggling family member who might have mental health issues?
Yeah, these are really difficult cases, right? So is the person substantially unable to take care of themselves, or are they substantially unwilling to take care of themselves? And the court only intervenes if they're unable, right? And so, so I don't know that I have the quick tips that you're hoping for, but I really what I can do is just empathize for families out there who have loved ones with, schizophrenia, bipolar. There are mental health powers of attorney that do kick in if someone is in a mental health crisis. So that might be one path.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. We have to wrap up the show, but I hope you had a good time.
I did. Thanks for having us.
Great. Okay, you heard it here on Talk Law Radio. Now, for the person who wanted me to talk about all of the steps of guardianship, that's a really big question, and so we'll be breaking that down for you over the next 4 to 8 weeks. So I'll talk to you later.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.